I never imagined the people I called family would conspire to trap me in a foreign country by stealing my passport. But when it happened, I wasn't the scared, naive woman they thought I was. My name is Mara Ellison. I'm 32, married to Caleb. From the outside, our life looked good. A nice house, a quiet town, polite smiles at family dinners. But underneath, something always felt wrong. Caleb's parents, Douglas and Janine, treated me like an outsider who had somehow stolen their son. They never said it directly, but I could feel it in the way Janine smiled too wide, the way Douglas watched me as if I didn't belong. When Caleb told me his parents wanted us to go on a family trip to Costa Rica, I tried to sound excited. He said it would be a chance to reconnect, to relax, to start fresh. I wanted to believe him. Still, something in his tone felt off, too practiced, like he'd already rehearsed the lines. A few days before the flight, Caleb asked if he could hold on to my passport. He said he wanted to keep all the documents together for safety. I laughed it off and handed it to him, but inside, a small voice whispered that I shouldn't have. It wasn't a big deal, I told myself. Married couples share everything, right? But that night, when I asked where he'd put it, he brushed me off and changed the subject. The morning we left, Janine kept hugging me too tightly, saying things like, "This trip will be good for all of us, dear." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Douglas carried the suitcases to the car and told me to relax and let Caleb handle everything. Their kindness felt like a performance. Each word carefully placed, every gesture too perfect. At the airport, Caleb kept my passport the whole time. When I reached for it, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've got it." I felt a flicker of irritation, but didn't want to start a fight in front of his parents. So I stayed quiet. On the plane, Janine chatted about beaches and sightseeing while Douglas read a business magazine. Caleb rested his hand on mine, but it felt more like a reminder than affection, a silent warning to stay calm, to keep playing the part. I stared out the window as the plane lifted into the clouds, wondering why I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something I wouldn't be able to walk out of. Still, I smiled, pretending everything was fine. I told myself I was overthinking it, that maybe this trip would bring peace. But deep down, I knew better. Something about the way they all looked at me, their quiet glances, their forced laughter, told me this wasn't a vacation at all. And as the plane carried us farther from home, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Something was waiting for me on the other side of that flight, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I'd be coming back the same. From the first day in Costa Rica, I felt like something was wrong. The hotel was beautiful, tall palms, the smell of the ocean, warm sunlight, but I couldn't enjoy any of it. Caleb wouldn't let me go anywhere alone. Every time I tried to step outside, he found a reason to come with me. He said he was worried about my safety, that tourists could get into trouble if they wandered too far. His words sounded caring, but his tone wasn't. It felt like a command. At first, I tried to brush it off. I told myself he was just being protective. But the more time passed, the more I saw how tight his control was. If I wanted to take a walk, he insisted we go together. If I talked too long to a waiter, he'd suddenly appear by my side. Even when I went to buy sunscreen, he handed me the exact cash, so I wouldn't have to bother with my wallet. Janine acted sweet, smiling all the time, but her kindness always came with small jabs. "You must be happy to have a break from work," she'd say, then add softly, "You've been so distracted lately, dear. Maybe this trip will remind you what really matters." Douglas rarely spoke to me, but when he did, his tone was sharp. "Caleb tells us you've been stressed about your job. That kind of life isn't good for a marriage." It was strange how every conversation turned toward me leaving my job. I worked in a small marketing firm back home, and it was the one thing that made me feel independent. But here, they kept bringing it up, as if I didn't have a choice. Caleb kept saying, "You don't need to work anymore, Mara. We're fine. Why not focus on family?" The more I heard it, the more it felt like a trap. Every word, every smile was leading to the same place, me giving up who I was. One afternoon, I stepped out onto the hotel balcony to get some air. I was just about to go back inside when I heard Janine's voice from the next room. She was talking quietly, but her words carried in the still air. "She'll see it our way soon," she said. Caleb replied, his voice low. "It's better this way. Once we start fresh here, she won't fight it anymore." My stomach dropped. Start fresh here? I stood frozen, trying to understand what that meant. I wanted to believe I had misheard, but I knew I hadn't. Their tone wasn't loving, it was planning. That evening at dinner, I watched them laugh and chat as if nothing had happened. Caleb held my hand across the table, and his parents smiled like everything was perfect. But behind those smiles, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. This wasn't a family trip. It was a plan, one they thought I'd never see coming. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just their guest. I was their target. On the third morning, I woke up early, hoping for a quiet moment before everyone else got up. The room was still and bright with the soft morning sun. I decided to check my passport, just to make sure it was where I had left it. I opened the small safe in the corner of the room, typed in the code, and pulled the door open. It was empty. For a few seconds, I thought maybe I had made a mistake. I checked again, moving my clothes aside, feeling around inside the safe. Nothing. My passport was gone. My stomach tightened as I turned toward Caleb, who was just waking up. "Where's my passport?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He rubbed his eyes, acting confused. "Relax, Mara. I moved it. You shouldn't stress over little things." "Moved it where?" I asked. My heart was pounding now. He gave me a half smile. "I put it somewhere safer. You don't need to worry about it. I'll take care of everything." I stared at him, waiting for him to explain, but he didn't. He got up and started getting dressed, like nothing had happened. "Caleb," I said again, louder this time, "I want my passport back." He sighed and looked at me the way someone might look at a child. "You're overreacting," he said. "You always do this, turn small things into drama. Just enjoy the trip, okay?" I felt heat rise in my face, but I didn't say anything. I knew pushing him would only make things worse. When we went down for breakfast, I tried again. "I need my passport," I said quietly, while his parents were sipping their coffee. Janine looked up, her face full of surprise, as if I had insulted her. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice shaking. "Caleb only wanted to help. You should be thankful he's looking out for you." Douglas said nothing, but I saw the way he smirked behind his cup. Caleb reached for my hand across the table. "We're family, Mara," he said softly. "You have to trust us." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my bag and walk out, but I had nowhere to go without that passport. They knew that. They wanted me to feel helpless. But what they didn't know was that I had already made copies of my passport before the trip. I had printed ones hidden deep inside my suitcase, and a digital copy saved in my email. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but knowing I had those backups gave me a small flicker of strength. So I smiled. I acted calm. I told them I understood. But inside, I was already planning what to do next. They thought they'd taken control of me, but I still had one card left, and I wasn't done playing yet. The days that followed felt heavy. Caleb changed toward me. He was still polite in front of his parents, but when we were alone, his voice was cold, his eyes hard. He said I was too attached to my phone and took it from me, saying I needed to unplug and be present. I told him I needed it to check in with work, but he just smiled and said, "You're on vacation. Relax." He slipped my phone into his pocket and never gave it back. I wanted to fight him for it, but I knew how that would look. Janine and Douglas were already acting as if nothing was wrong. Janine stayed cheerful, always planning family meals and beach walks, while Douglas talked about how peaceful life could be if people stopped worrying so much. Every word felt like a test. They wanted to see if I'd break. So I stopped fighting. I smiled. I laughed at Janine's stories. I pretended to enjoy the trip. Inside, though, I was alert. I watched them closely. How Caleb always carried his bag, how Douglas kept the hotel key cards, how Janine called the front desk and spoke in low tones. They thought I was blind to it all, but I was watching everything. One afternoon, while Caleb and his parents went to a nearby market, I went down to the hotel cafe. That's where I met Luis. He was a kind young man, probably in his mid-20s, with a calm smile and curious eyes. He asked if I was enjoying my stay, and for a moment, I almost said yes. But then he noticed the way I hesitated. "Is everything okay, Senora?" he asked quietly. I looked around to make sure no one was watching. "I just need to know," I said softly, "how far the U.S. Embassy is from here." His eyebrows lifted a little, but he didn't ask why. Instead, he leaned closer and told me there was one in San Jose, a few hours away. He even gave me directions, written neatly on a napkin, and told me which bus I could take if I ever needed to get there. I thanked him, trying not to sound desperate. That night, when Caleb came back, he didn't notice the folded napkin hidden in my pocket. He was in a good mood, joking with his parents. I smiled back and joined the laughter, pretending to be the same obedient wife he wanted. But something inside me had shifted. I stopped panicking. I started thinking like them, patient, quiet, strategic. I would wait. I would play along until they believed they had won. I let Caleb think his control was complete. I let Janine think her fake kindness fooled me. But every smile I gave them was planned, every nod a step toward my escape. They didn't know it yet, but I had already started writing the ending of their story, and it wouldn't be the one they imagined. I found out the truth by accident. Caleb had gone to take a shower, and his phone was sitting on the nightstand. A new email notification popped up with my name in the subject line. My heart jumped. I shouldn't have looked, but something in me said I had to. I opened it and saw messages between him and a travel agent. He had canceled my return ticket 2 days ago. My hands shook as I scrolled. He had also been going through my emails, forwarding them to himself. There were messages from my boss, my best friend, even my bank. He had read everything. He knew I'd been looking for help, and now he had cut off every way I could reach out. When he came out of the bathroom, I sat on the bed, holding his phone. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly. He froze, then smiled like I was being silly. "Doing what, Mara? You canceled my flight. You're reading my messages." He sighed, taking the phone from me. "You don't understand," he said softly, sitting beside me. "You've been stressed. You make bad decisions when you're upset. I'm just trying to protect you until you calm down." Protect me. The words made me sick. But I didn't show it. Instead, I started to cry. Real tears. I let my shoulders shake, my voice break. I said he was right, that maybe I needed to stop fighting. He seemed relieved. He put his arm around me and said, "Good girl. I just want what's best for us." That night, he slept peacefully beside me, thinking I'd finally given up. But while he slept, I lay awake, planning my next move. The next morning, I found Luis near the hotel cafe. I told him quietly that I needed to make a phone call, but I couldn't use the hotel's phone. He nodded and handed me his cell. My hands trembled as I dialed the number for the U.S. Embassy. A woman answered, and I told her my situation in a low voice. She asked for proof of identity. I told her I had copies of my passport hidden in my luggage. She asked me a few questions, birth date, hometown, security numbers, to verify who I was. When she confirmed everything, she said, "We can help you, but you need to come to the embassy in person. Come tomorrow morning. Quietly. Do not tell anyone you're leaving." I thanked her and gave the phone back to Luis. He nodded again, his eyes serious now. "Be careful," he said. That night, Caleb noticed nothing. He thought I was broken, quiet, and harmless. I cooked dinner with Janine, smiled through their stories, and even laughed once. Inside, though, I was calm for the first time in days. I knew I was getting out, but freedom wasn't enough. Not anymore. After everything they'd done to me, I wasn't leaving without making sure they'd face the truth. They thought they'd stolen my life. Tomorrow, I'd take it back, and I'd take theirs apart piece by piece. That night, while everyone slept, I sat on the edge of the bed with my small bag open and my heart racing. I knew I needed proof, something that would make sure no one could twist this story once I was gone. Quietly, I turned on my phone, which I had borrowed back for music, and started recording. I spoke softly into it, explaining everything. How my passport was missing, how Caleb had taken my phone, how his parents kept pretending nothing was wrong. Then I opened the hotel safe again and took a picture of the empty space where my passport used to be. Over the next day, I started collecting more. Every time Caleb talked down to me, telling me I was too emotional, I hit record. Every moment Janine said something that hinted at what they'd done, I saved it. During one breakfast, she slipped up completely. She said, "Once we have her settled, she'll realize staying here is what's best." Caleb glanced at her, eyes wide, but it was too late. I had the whole thing recorded on my phone, hidden under a napkin beside my plate. I felt a strange calm as I worked. It was like I was outside myself, watching everything happen through glass. Every smile I gave, every gentle nod was part of my act. They thought I was defeated, but I was building something stronger than their lies, a record of the truth. That evening, while Caleb was showering, I found his tablet lying on the table. I hadn't planned to touch it, but something pushed me to look. I opened his messages and froze. There were texts to a woman named Renee. The messages weren't new. They'd been going on for months. She called him baby. He called her love. In one message, she asked, "So, when will she know?" And Caleb replied, "After the trip. She'll stay behind for a while. Then I'll come back for you." My hands went cold. All the air in my chest disappeared. So that was the plan. He hadn't just wanted to trap me here. He wanted to replace me. I scrolled through more messages, each one cutting deeper. There were pictures of them together at a restaurant I recognized. There were flight confirmations for Renee to fly to Costa Rica 2 weeks later. My heart ached, but the pain didn't crush me, it hardened me. I copied the messages, the photos, everything, and sent them in an email to my attorney and my best friend back home. I titled it, "If Something Happens to Me, Here's Why." Then I attached all the recordings and pictures, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. When I hit send, I felt a strange peace. For the first time, I wasn't scared. Caleb had taken my freedom, but I had taken his secrets. He thought I was weak, but he didn't know I'd already built my escape and my revenge. The morning I left, the sky was pale and quiet. I told Caleb I wasn't feeling well, that I had a bad migraine and needed to rest. He frowned, but Janine quickly said I should stay behind and get some sleep. They were planning a short family excursion that day, and Douglas was already waiting by the door. Caleb kissed my forehead before leaving and told me not to leave the room. I nodded, pretending to be weak. The moment the door closed, I sat up and looked around the room one last time. My suitcase was half open, clothes scattered, but I only took what I truly needed: my hidden documents, a few bills of cash, and the printed copies of my passport. I slipped on comfortable shoes, tucked the papers safely into my bag, and stared at my wedding ring. For a moment, I felt my chest tighten. Then I slid it off my finger and placed it on the bed beside his pillow. It looked small and cold in the morning light. Luis was waiting near the service exit, just like he said he would be. He didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and handed me a small cap to cover my hair. "The bus leaves in 10 minutes, he whispered. "You'll be fine." I thanked him softly, my voice shaking, and walked out through the narrow hallway that led behind the hotel kitchen. Every sound made my heart jump, the clatter of dishes, the hum of voices, but no one stopped me. Outside, the air was warm and heavy. I followed Luis's directions exactly, walking fast but not running, until I reached the small bus stop by the road. When the bus pulled up, I climbed on and sat by the window, my hands gripping my bag. As the hotel disappeared in the distance, I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The ride to San Jose felt endless. Every turn of the wheels felt like a heartbeat. When I reached the U.S. Embassy, the guards checked my papers and led me inside. My voice trembled as I explained everything to the officer, a kind woman with a calm face. I showed her the copies of my passport, told her about the theft, and gave her my name and details. She listened carefully and then said, "You did the right thing coming here." They filed an official report and helped me apply for an emergency replacement passport. When they handed it to me, I felt something inside me lift. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't scared. I was free. My phone started to buzz, Caleb's name flashing again and again. I stared at the screen for a long moment before pressing block. No more calls. No more control. As my flight took off later that day, I looked out the window and watched the ocean fade beneath the clouds. The fear, the lies, the control, it all stayed behind. Ahead of me was silence, clean and open, like the first breath after a storm. When Caleb and his parents came back to the U.S., they expected to walk into the same house they had left behind. But when they opened the front door, it was quiet. My things were gone, no clothes in the closet, no shoes by the door, no trace of me at all. The only thing waiting for them was a thick envelope sitting on the kitchen table. Inside were divorce papers. And not just that. There were legal documents, bank statements, and copies of every message, photo, and recording I had collected. The evidence was clear. Caleb had stolen my passport, read my emails, and tried to trap me overseas. I had sent everything to my attorney before I left Costa Rica, and now the case was in motion. The papers also included notice that the federal authorities had been informed of the passport theft, along with Caleb's written messages and recordings proving his intent. Janine was the first to react. She gasped when she read the words "fraud investigation." Douglas turned red, his hands shaking as he scanned the documents. Caleb just stood there for a long time, silent, his jaw tight. He looked around the house as if expecting me to walk out and say it was all a mistake. But I wasn't there, and it wasn't a mistake. He tried calling me again and again, but every number went straight to voicemail. Finally, he showed up at my new apartment a few days later. I didn't answer the door. He stood outside for nearly 20 minutes, knocking and calling my name. Through the peephole, I saw him, tired, desperate, not the confident man he used to be. He kept saying he was sorry that it had all gotten out of hand, that he had done it because he loved me. I didn't open the door. When he realized I wasn't coming out, he sank down on the steps, his voice breaking. "Please, Mara," he said softly. "We can fix this." I stayed quiet. There was nothing to fix. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. My silence was my answer. Later, his lawyer tried to reach mine, hoping for a deal. But there was nothing to negotiate. The documents were already filed. The truth was already out. Caleb's job called me for a statement soon after. His company had received notice about the investigation. I didn't say much, only that everything I'd reported was true. Weeks passed, and I didn't see or hear from him again. Friends told me he looked lost, like someone who didn't know what to do next. Maybe he didn't. For so long, he had believed he could control every part of my life. But now, I had taken all that power back. He once told me I'd never survive without him. Now he was the one drowning in the silence I left behind, and my calm, my quiet, scared him more than any scream ever could. The investigation moved faster than I thought it would. Within a few weeks, I received a call from the authorities asking for a statement about what had happened. I met with them, told them everything clearly, and handed over the recordings and photos I had kept. They listened carefully, took notes, and assured me that what Caleb and his parents had done was serious. Taking someone's passport wasn't just controlling, it was a crime. News of the case spread quickly. Caleb's company found out through official channels, and soon after, he lost his job. The management said they couldn't have someone involved in a federal investigation working for them. Janine and Douglas weren't spared either. They were questioned for their part in taking and hiding my passport. When they realized how deep the trouble was, they tried to act like they hadn't known anything, but the recordings proved otherwise. For the first time, I didn't feel like the powerless one. I didn't need to yell or argue. The truth was doing all the work for me. Every document, every bit of evidence I had kept was now protecting me. With the case moving forward, I focused on building a new life. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I could lock the door and know no one would take my keys, my phone, or my freedom. I found a new job at a marketing firm that didn't know me as the woman who had been controlled or trapped. I was just Mara, someone starting again. At first, it was strange to live without fear. Simple things like walking to the store alone or keeping my phone in my own bag felt new. I started going to therapy to untangle the years of control I had lived under. My therapist listened without judgment, helping me see how much I had endured and how much strength it had taken to survive it. Some nights, I would sit by my window with a cup of tea and think about the woman I used to be. The one who kept trying to please everyone, who ignored the small red flags because she believed love meant patience. I missed her sometimes, the part of me that believed people always meant well. But I also felt proud. That version of me had suffered, but she had also learned. She had planned, she had fought, and she had won. I didn't want revenge anymore. That part of the story was done. What I wanted now was peace. The kind that comes from knowing no one owns you. No one decides your future but you. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. The woman who once felt trapped in a foreign country was now standing on her own ground. I had lost a marriage, but I had found myself, and that felt like justice enough. Months passed before I heard anything from Caleb again. Life had finally started to feel normal. I went to work, met new people, and spent my weekends exploring the city on my own. The past still lived somewhere deep inside me, but it no longer ruled my thoughts. I was healing, slowly but surely. Then one morning, I opened my email and saw his name in my inbox. My stomach tightened for a second, but I didn't panic. The subject line said, "I've changed." I stared at it for a while, wondering what he could possibly say now. Maybe it was another excuse, or maybe it was a new way to pull me back in. I clicked on the message, just enough to see the first line. "I'm writing from a rehabilitation center. I've been getting help, and I'm finally realizing what I did to you." That was as far as I read. I didn't need to see the rest. There was nothing he could say that would change the past or undo what he had done. So I closed the message, dragged it to the trash, and deleted it without hesitation. My hands didn't shake this time. Afterward, I sat by the window, watching the sun stretch across the buildings outside. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to make me uneasy, but now felt like peace. I thought about how much had changed since that trip, how I'd gone from being afraid to take a step without permission to making choices for myself every single day. People often talk about strength as something loud, yelling, fighting, standing tall. But I learned that real strength is sometimes quiet. It's in the moments when you decide not to answer, not to look back, not to give someone another chance to hurt you. It's choosing silence over chaos, freedom over fear. I didn't need an apology or closure from him. I already had both in my own way. My life was no longer tied to his or to the people who tried to control me. I was free, not because they let me go, but because I had walked away and never turned around. As the sun rose higher, I smiled to myself, a soft, steady kind of smile, the kind that comes when you finally understand who you are. They thought they'd trapped me, but I was already free.